Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vintage Super League. We've got our round five matchup right here in the booth. Me and Bob are playing this tonight to cap off the night. But for right now, we're going to be taking a look at Rich Shay on Delver, which he's played the last couple times you could play a deck, and Tom Martell playing Gifts Ungiven. So,
Yeah, I mean, should be interesting. I know Tom is still looking for that first mark in the W column. So,
well, if Kai got there,
yeah, I mean, it seems only fair.
yeah. Though I've been talking to Tom and Gifts Ungiven, I don't know how well positioned the deck is right now. Like I've been trying to get it to work, and hopefully Tom got something sweet going. But I don't know. I'm not sold on it, and I love Gifts Ungiven. I've cast that card so many times.
Oh, I absolutely love Gifts Ungiven also, but the number of other things going on in Vintage right now. I'm
Yeah,
sure there's space for it, but I think it takes a little more innovation than. So, I mean, I hope somebody gets there. I mean, Vex is always a good thing.
yeah, and like I was just telling Kai, at the tail end there, a, a, a spell that costs three and a blue and doesn't win you the game immediately is tough. It looks like the guys are ready, so we might just be heading down in a second here after we take a look at our players. Got Rich on 2-2, Tom on 0-4, losing to Dave last week, and actually Rich beat you last week with some timely time walks, I remember.
Yeah, I mean, going back and watching the replay, like I actually wasn't overly happy with my play, but
Mhm.
he had a couple of very nice draw steps in there.
Yes, yes, he
So
did.
that that is vintage.
Yep. So this is Rich's, Delver Pyromancer. He's not playing Monastery Mentor. He's the only person playing Pyromancers this particular trimester, uh, and just what we've come to expect: cheap card draw, cheap removal, cheap interactive spells, four lightning bolts. So facing up against Tom here. Tom running Gifts Ungiven. Or the combo here is to cast Gifts Ungiven to get Recoup, Yawgmoth's Will, Black Lotus, and something else. I mean, that's a common pile. Having played a lot of gifts, I've made tons of different piles. Sometimes you get really weird ones, but that's the base combos. Using gifts as a way to set up a win with either Blightsteel Colossus or just locking the game up in playing a Jace or playing a Vault Key here. So it looks like the players are ready, so I think
Do
we
you
can head
prefer a
down.
recoup?
Versus like a
Do you
Noxious
prefer
Revival
a
or a Burning Wish.
recoup like Noxious?
Yeah, I've liked Recoup more than some of those other cards, like Noxious
Yeah.
Survival. I think is the thing is Recoup on like a Thoughtseize or a Preordain is actually fine mid game play, and Noxious Survival is just not a card. Burning Wish is interesting though. I've played some gifts lists that don't have Recoup or Noxious Survival and just have Burning Wish to put in the piles. So Rich on a pretty normal Delver hand, but has no misstep, no force of will, and Tom has a potentially very fast kill here. Tom and it looks like Rich is on the play, but Tom can still play turn one Time Vault, turn two Vampiric Tutor for key, play key. I wonder if Tom goes for it. You know, I'm a little surprised Rich ran the turn one Delver instead of the Preordain or a Ponder here. I've seen watching like Steve, for example, Steve always plays Preordain or Ponder in that spot. I think with a hand with no permission, I'm a little more likely to not just play a Delver on turn one. Though, if you're playing against a slower gifts deck, I could see the logic.
Yeah, there's a lot of choices there, but boy, I mean, when you're playing Delver, if you're going to put Delver in your deck, I think when you have it on turn one, you just got to throw it into play sometimes. Uh,
Yeah,
then again,
uh,
I'm also thinking about it versus playing in a tournament where I guess turn one, game one, you don't know what you're playing against. Here with the lists, it's hard for me to correctly evaluate.
yeah, I think this is a matchup where I'm a little more inclined to delve on turn one, but that's if I have zero missteps, zero force of will, zero pyroblast, I'm a little more interested in going for it. Rich is likely going to play a young pyromancer here, and if he does, I think if I'm Tom, I just go vampiric tutor for key and just try to win the game on turn two. Rich has to have force of will or mental misstep.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with a draw like that, I think it's not close. That's what you go for.
And the great thing about that is that even if Rich does have Force of Will, you then have Gifts Ungiven with 4 mana total, 5 even actually next turn because of the Academy. So Tom's in really good shape if this doesn't work. Rich has to like gush to look for mental misstep here.
No, I think it's a great spot to be in. Absolutely. And as we can see the other hand, it's a great spot to be in.
Yeah. Well, Rich could hit force of will or mental misstep. Those are his two outs. But if he doesn't, then Voltaic Key plus Time Vault does end the game, and Rich hit the force of will.
Wow. This is one of those times that as a player, when you watch the replay afterwards, it can be a little painful.
Well, especially since you know that Rich didn't have it, because otherwise you wouldn't have gushed on the opponent's turn. So, yeah,
right.
Tom's probably not super happy right now. But Tom has a turn or two, and he has Gifts Academy plus 2 artifacts in play. He's not just dead.
Okay.
Flipping a probe. Yeah, Martell's on a 1-turn clock. Actually, never mind. Flipping the Delver makes it so Martell needs to do something this turn or die. And Gifts is not generally going to get you out of it. It's not quite that efficient.
Yeah, not that turn. Yeah, this is one of those spots where Young Pyromancer really shows why it's just as good or at times better than Monastery Mentor.
This is a little interesting, though. Tom drew a Mox, which is 2 mana with Academy. That was one of his better draws. Obviously, he has a lot of cards that are much better than that, but now he can cast Gifts. I would imagine you'd want to tap it, so tap the other Mox. He can cast Gifts with 2 mana in play and one that Rich knows about because of Probe. So 3 mana total. That gives Tom a decent amount of options, including he does have. Let's take a look at his deck list. He does have cards, like he has Slice and Dice, which he can cycle here to buy another turn. So if he gets something like Slice and Dice, Yawgmoth's Will, Black Lotus, Time Walk. I guess he gets like Lotus Time Walk. That's not great. Trying to think what other piles here. Tinker doesn't do a whole lot because Blade still does buy him another turn though, but he doesn't do lethal on the following turn. So let's see. He's got a couple. Like Time Walk at the very least buys him an untapped step with a lot of mana. He could get like Time Walk, Slice and Dice. The problem with getting Yawgwill though is if you don't get a mana source, Yawgwill doesn't do anything.
Right, but if it's Lotus, Time Walk, Yawgwill, and Recoup.
So what is the worst pile you get? You get Yawgwill Recoup, and then you get to play Lotus Time Walk. That's pretty good. If you get Recoup Lotus, you can still cast Yawgwill. If you get Recoup Time Walk, that sounds like a pretty good pile.
I think that does it. Because I think, like, if you just Yawgwill here, it's just Lotus, put the key back in play, untap my Time Vault.
Yeah, so Yawgwill's just game if you get Lotus. So Yawgwill, Lotus, Recoup, Time Walk sounds pretty good because Time Walk lets you untap and flashback Recoup for anything because you have millions of mana with Academy. So I think that sounds like just a win. I can't conceive of a 2-card pile that doesn't win you the game there.
I think that does it.
Yeah. So that is one of the advantages of Recoup. Noxious Survival wouldn't have done it for you here.
Yeah.
You get like Lotus Noxious Survival.
No, I actually really liked. I mean, this is a perfect example of why Recoup is where it belongs.
Tom, you can see in the hand cam, he's writing his notes, which I did something similar to that when I was playing Doomsday, where I would like actually just had like a notepad where I would just like cross off things like to make sure like I had the right cards and the right cards in order. That's pretty sweet.
That makes a lot of sense.
I didn't think of doing it on stream so that people could see. Tom should type in something like, he gives me Yawgwill, win the game easily, great, or something.
Yeah.
So Recoup's better than Snapcaster because even if they bin the Recoup, you can still get Yawgwill back with it, and that matters for some piles.
Wait, but what happens if they give you Lotus Recoup?
You play Lotus and you can sack Recoup Time Walk, and then next turn I think you have enough mana with Flashback Recoup, Flashback Will, play a key, untap. Does he have enough mana for that?
3, 4, 5, 6 with the land in place 7. Flashback, Lotus, or Flashback. And then you get the Lotus back. And then you can get getting the Lotus back, you can put key into play and start untapping your vault.
Yeah. Well, Lotus Recoup, you just sack Lotus, Recoup Will, replay Lotus, replay key. So, yeah. I think all of it works.
Yeah.
So I guess
Okay, so
Tom might
I
be
can't
putting
see his notes well enough.
it looks
But
like Snapcaster is the last one. Snapcaster instead of Time Walk. It's possible that that does it too. Like, yeah, actually, Snapcaster isn't good because if you get Recoup Snapcaster, that's not a good pile. But I like uh, Yawgmoth's Will, Time Walk, Black Lotus. I think that's what you want. If you put in Slice and the problem with you have to put in Yawgwill Lotus Recoup to make Yawgwill a viable pile. I guess the last card of Slice and Dice also buys you a turn, but Time Walk is cleaner, right? Because it just wins you the game.
yeah, I think it's a lot cleaner. I think it works out much better.
And yeah, I mean Tom's Lotus isn't like exiled or anything like that, so I think he's in okay shape here. So it looks like Tom's on currently Lotus Yawgwill Slice and Dice. Is that Snapcaster? So let's say you get Lotus Snapcaster. That will do it. Slice and Dice buys you a turn no matter what.
Right.
Yawgwill
I mean,
Snapcaster does it. Yeah,
the problem is right there. You just end up with Lotus Slice and Dice.
yeah, and then
And
yeah, you have
and
nowhere to go.
and don't get me wrong. Looking at Rich Shay's hand, Lotus Slice and Dice can very easily win Tom the game here, but it's just usually it's better
Yeah,
just to win outright without letting him untap.
you usually that's better. Yeah,
I mean, we're all for bonus magic here. I mean,
yeah, that is true. Someone asked if you give you Lotus Time Walk, you just cast Time Walk, untap, flashback, recoup on Yawgmoth's Will and win the game. So
yeah.
because we're assuming he's got Lotus at that point, and he's got Academy. But
Yeah, and if somebody gives you Lotus Time Walk, I mean, you don't even have to sack the Lotus to Time Walk.
yeah, you just cast Time Walk,
Yeah,
and then next turn you have 20 something mana.
yeah, you've countless mana.
You have 7, 10, 11 mana. There, I counted it just because we have
Yeah,
nothing else to do. But you do have a lot of mana, that is going to be enough.
yeah. Well, but then you get the 3-off replaying the Lotus after the will, and it's
So I think the part Thomas might be missing here is the Time Walk. Like he hasn't written down Time Walk yet, but so far so good. Black Lotus, Recoup, Yawgmoth's Will. I like. He's got a Slice and Dice in there. So Tom ends up with Slice and Dice. Well, Slice and Dice Lotus probably wins you the game. I think that's what Rich has to give him to not lose, right?
yeah,
Actually,
Lotus.
yeah,
Yes.
because there you can't flashback Yawgwill and win in the same turn.
Yeah, because I mean, even giving him Recoup and Yogwill, he just. I mean,
Cast Yawgwill,
Rich,
yeah.
Rich could do it assuming he didn't have a land, but we all know he does.
And Rich knows too because of the probe.
Oh, it's been a while. I forgot what he
Yeah,
actually
the,
saw.
the probe went on the stack many minutes ago. So, so Slice and Dice. If Tom gets that, he'll play this turn, go to 7, get a Volcanic, cycle Slice and Dice, kill the Pyromancer and the 3 tokens, which
Oh, but he
puts
still has
Tom.
a 3/2 to deal with. I mean, he's
He
still
does.
on a
He does,
on
but
a
then
clock.
but next turn, if he doesn't die, he has Recoup plus Lotus.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, that's. Oh, and then it'll just put the key in play to untap
Yeah,
Timefall.
yeah. Next turn. I mean, this probably wins Tom the game because Rich has to give him I guess recoup Slice and Dice, right? That's recoup giving him recoups better than giving him Lotus. So you Slice and Dice, and then next turn you can cast Yeah, next turn Tom wins the game if Rich doesn't draw anything.
Yeah.
And Rich has a 3-2 versus Tom at 7, and Tom does get to draw a card off cycling Slice and Dice. So that's not awful.
And yeah, Rich has a lot of cards he can draw here. I mean, as is
Yeah.
Vintage. I mean, anything on top of his deck could drastically change his game.
Yeah, and Rich does have no, he does not have a Null Rod in his main deck. He has a Grafdigger's Cage. Grafdigger's Cage does just stop all these flashback and Yawgwill shenanigans. So Tom's waiting on the Slice and Dice. I don't know if it matters if you wait or not. Rich can't really put creatures into play at instant speed. Slice
Well,
can't be countered, so
it's just
yeah,
a matter if there's some number because Tom has no idea what's in Rich's hand. So I
yeah.
think you wait on it if your opponent's list has some number of Snapcasters.
Right now, Rich has got Tom at 1 with that time walk draw. Tom
Yeah,
goes to 7 off the fetch, and then gets attacked down to 4, and then time walk gets attacked down to 1. Now Rich has 4 lightning bolts that have just gone live. This game is getting exciting.
very much so. And then there's a number of things that just change the game entirely. Also, like if he happens to draw Dak Faden off the top and takes Tom's Time Vault.
Yeah, I mean Rich has a ton of live draws in his deck. You know, counter spells, lightning bolt, Grafdigger's Cage, Dak Faden, like you said. There's a lot of cards Rich can draw. And there's the Grafdigger's Cage.
There's the Grafdigger's Cage. Wow.
So Tom did draw Treasure Cruise. So
Wow.
so now Tom can cast a Treasure Cruise, draw a bunch of cards, and hopefully find an answer to Delver. Then we just have a game. Does Tom have a way to get rid of? Let's take a look.
Get
Tom,
rid of the Cage main deck.
I don't think he does. No, no. He's at that point. Tom is on the Win with Blightsteel Colossus plan. The key is no longer an out. And with a cage out, the way to get Blightsteel is just hard cast it, which is, you know, it's a viable plan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. It's interesting where you go from here.
yeah, so Tom, at this point, you might as well just play Cruise for 1. There's no cards in your graveyard don't do anything.
Yeah. There's no way of getting rid of the Cage, so those are all
Yeah.
fairly useless.
So
this is an example of why you don't want to give your opponent that last turn.
right, Tom has 2 Pyroblasts to kill the Delver. A Jace would buy him certainly some time. I mean, you might as well leave some of your cards in there for good form, but Tom's not playing my sweet repeal. So he's got no outs to the cage here.
Yeah. No, I'm certainly becoming more and more a fan of the repeal. I have a pair of
Yeah,
them in my
I
own
saw
deck
that you
this,
have
this
two in your
trimester.
list. Though they do have some synergy with Mystic Remora. You know, I noticed that.
Yeah, Remora and Top and Mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tom gets to continue the fight. The Thoughtseize is dead in more ways than one.
But he gets to see another card off Time Walk.
Yep.
And he gets to see more cards off Thirst for Knowledge. At least he's giving us a show of it.
Yeah.
And that will finally do it.
And a whammy.
Wow. That is unfortunate. So, taking a look at Rich's deck here. He's got Norod, which is a very effective card in this matchup. Ancient Grudges also. Despite Grafdigger's Cage being amazing there, I would rather just have Norod and Ancient Grudge. I think those do what you're kind of looking for a little bit better. Because Gifts is such a mana-intensive card. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, Rich is pretty much set. I mean, he's playing the kind of deck that's good against the deck Tom's playing, so he doesn't really need to do a whole lot more than that.
Yeah, no, I think you just want to keep your deck potent and putting questions on the board that Tom has to answer.
Yeah, I mean, given that you want to take out 4 Lightning Bolt in a Grafdigger's Cage, you put in like 2 Grudges, a Null Rod, and then maybe you just leave in a Grafdigger's Cage, as it turns out, just because it's better than... Well, Lightning Bolt's probably at that point better. We might as well cut the clock down a little bit. So...
Yeah, I usually like having the shot at a Lightning Bolt.
Yeah. It also can throw off their math if you at least even show them 1.
Hmm.
Tom too does not have a whole lot. He's got Slice and Dice, which is way better in this matchup than against the Monastery Mentor decks. But so Slice and Dice is good, but other than that, he doesn't have a whole lot. He has a Pyroblast too if he wants that.
Which I'm pretty sure he does. Yeah. Maybe he wants the mountain to smooth out his draws a little bit. I doubt it. It's not an overly wasteland heavy deck type thing.
And it looks like we're into game 2 here. Tom has a disruption heavy hand with a Treasure Cruise. This is the kind of hand where Treasure Cruise is awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
this is
Treasure
the
Cruise is
perfect hand for
a
Treasure.
great card, but yeah, when you have
Yeah.
Thoughtseize Pyroblast Flusterstorm into Cruise, that is a pretty good spot to be in.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what he thinks of the cage in his opponent's opening hand. I assume the Young Pyromancer is a much, much bigger deal, but
Yeah, given Rich's hand and that you have a Pyroblast to kill the Delver, I would lean towards just taking Pyromancer, planning on Pyroblasting Delver with Flusterstorm up in case Rich did draw Mental Misstep, and then casting a Cruise in a turn or two.
yeah, that seems like the best plan without having any more information.
Grafdigger's Cage, not a card you're super worried about. It's annoying in the long term, but I think that with Treasure Cruise and cards like Jace and Tinker in your deck, you can beat the Cage. I mean Tinker for Time Vault because Cage doesn't actually stop that.
Right, and I think one of the big parts is actually seeing it, and you can gifts for just value hands.
Yeah.
But he decided he did not want to deal with the cage.
All right, so Tom might be on a little bit more of an aggressive line here. Rich likely to be as well. He led with Delver last time. I like it a lot more this time than in the first game.
Yes, it seems much more straightforward this time.
Because Rich has, the Mental Misstep. And Tom took your Grafdigger's Cage, so we flipped a Delver here. Tom deciding after Delver flips, after getting that information, whether he wants to cast Pyroblast here.
And do we know what was revealed?
I did not catch that, so we'll find out when Rich draws in a second here. But
Yeah.
I guess whatever was revealed, it impacted Tom's decision here.
Yeah, I'm wondering because he did choose to Pyroblast. Oh,
Oh wow! So Rich revealed Dig Through Time, which he's going to be able to cast next turn if he really wants to. Given that 3 more cards are going to go to the graveyard this turn. Given Tom's hand, I imagine you fight over this.
well, not only do I think you want to fluster just to kill the Insectile Aberration, you just want it in your yard to cruise.
Yeah, this gives you exactly enough mana to cruise next turn. And you know Rich's hand at this point, so because the Mental Misstep was the last card you didn't know about, and you know that Rich can't counter it, especially if you expect him to play a Young Pyromancer this turn, which seems like the likely play.
Yeah, once you know his hand, I think you have to put him on the Pyromancer here.
And Rich has gone for playing the creature every time he's been able to this match.
Yes.
Well, you get to keep one of your dual lands untapped here.
And I think since he just revealed Dig Through Time, I think you leave the Volcanic up.
I agree.
In case you hit another Pyroblast.
Looks like Tom is going to play for maybe a Duress or something like that.
Yeah, the Duress, Thoughtseize, Vamp Tutor.
It paid off.
Yeah.
So Tom's doing a good job of disrupting, but Rich does have a Pyromancer in play. He's going to make 2 tokens next turn. I still think Tom's in trouble here. He's not actively moving towards winning the game right now.
Yeah, and the double Preordain, even if one gets misstep next turn, it's going to put just those 2 more tokens on the board, and the clock adds up really fast.
Yeah, Tom needs to draw like a Slice and Dice, and then he can maybe have time to cast Recoup on Treasure Cruise, which is a sweet plan. But
yeah, I mean, if he hits one of his 2 Slice and Dice, I think the whole game just changes.
Yeah, because then all of a sudden it's Dak Faden versus Recoup, which is a closer fight than it might sound like.
saw that ruby and I was thinking of the mentors. I'm like, there's
Yeah.
another token, but not quite.
Not yet, Bob.
Yeah.
So Tom chose not to mental misstep the preordain, the first one. I think I like misstepping the second. Let's see. The disadvantage is if Rich finds a misstep off the first preordain. The thing is, there's a good chance he bins a misstep anyway at this point in the game, and this way Rich has less information when you misstep. Is that true?
I boy, I feel like I messed up the first if I know I'm
Yeah,
gonna
that
misstep.
that was my instinct, but does it? I wonder how much it matters and what the advantage of doing either is. Looks like Tom just let them both resolve. And looks like he's going to run the recoup on duress plan. So he's kind of giving up on the treasure cruise for now. But I don't mind recoup on duress here. Rich just proved in a few times.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. And actually, if that's your game plan, I think letting the double preordain go through is
Yeah.
safer. There's still a card on the top of its deck that's probably quite good. Maybe the reason for letting the first preordain through is to see if he goes what combination of top top or bottom bottom or one of each he does. Like if both go on bottom, then the second preordain is probably safer than if it's both on top or one each.
Now Tom has the academy, which would help, cast fuel bigger things later when he draws more artifacts. But Tom doesn't have a lot of resources, in either direction. Like he doesn't have a lot of cards, and he has 5 mana, but that's not enough when we're trying to like flashback recoups onto things. Probe a nice little free card here. Tom may be planning on Force of Will and Dak Faden, though Rich now knows about that plan. Oh, and there's Gush.
Yeah,
See,
oh
this is why
wow,
this deck is so good. It's just
yeah,
Rich is operating off less lands than Tom, and all the rest of his cards are drawing him cards. Tom's got lands 4 and 5 in play that aren't really doing much for him.
yeah. There's just a constant momentum to it. There's just this steady crashing wave of threats that all matter. Well, this is a. I mean, he knows he has Dak, so
Yeah, if you
knowing he has the ruby also though, boy, it's a really tough situation because if he draws a flusterstorm or anything like that, the game
Pyroblast or
just
anything, yeah.
gets even worse.
My
I guess
inclination is to not force the Gush.
I agree. I mean, I typically don't want to remove a Force of Will and a blue card for 2 random cards off the top of their deck.
Yeah, but Tom's in a really bad shape no matter what.
Hmm.
I guess if Gush resolves and kind of bricks off, and then you force stack, and then you draw Slice and Dice, you're not doing terribly then.
Well,
Rumors of bricking have been exaggerated.
thinking the exact same thing. So much for bricking off. Yeah, with that recoup in the graveyard, you just toss out the cage and see if it gets misstepped.
Yeah, and you're like pretty happy either way.
Yeah, I mean, you can even drop a ruby and put out the cage.
Okay, looks like Rich is going to lead with Dig. This, I think, is an
Yeah.
easy Force of Will
Yes.
because it uses all Rich's mana. Now he can, yeah, I guess he could just play Cage and he could play Ruby if he wanted to. But Tom's on a 2-turn clock now. I mean, he gets two more hits if Rich plays nothing else. There's a Gifts. This. Oh, there's a
With the
cage in
cage out,
play.
it's very
I
tough.
was gonna say that might be, that Gifts would be pretty good there, but with a cage in play, it's gonna be kind of tough.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at saying go and end of turn. I mean, we can start puzzling this up right now. It's like a slice and dice, an ancestral,
Slice and
a,
dice, ancestral, demonic tutor.
a ponder. Who knows?
Yeah,
It's
like
just
Tinker, but I know you can't even get Colossus. So yeah, I don't know. This looks tough. Rich also, if he draws, he can if he's going to go down to 1 card to play Dak, assuming whatever he draws isn't anything, probably leads with stealing the emerald anyway because Dacking with 1 card in your hand doesn't really get you anywhere. So
right. I think he almost certainly steals Emerald because it represents 2 mana.
which makes the gifts even more difficult to go.
Yeah, and I can't remember what Tom removed, so I might even be naming off cards that are already gone.
No, he hasn't drawn, I think, most of those cards. He certainly hasn't drawn a Slice and Dice or an Ancestral or Demonic Tutor yet.
Yeah, I mean, does he toss a Time Walk into the piles just to cast whatever else he gets and
He could. It looks like he's just running
and
the.
untap?
Yeah.
Well, that's fair. He's probably going to be. I mean, he's going to be handed something he can cast, and he knows all of the cards in his opponent's hand.
So now Tom pretty much setting up for next turn, but at least this way you know Gifts resolves. Though I think Tom's at a point in the game where if Rich has a Pyroblast or Flusterstorm, you're probably not winning anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a card you can plan on beating, so you just have to kind of ignore its existence.
I generally like Demonic Tutor. Yep. Slice and Dice, Ancestral. If you do this, you're getting either an Ancestral or a Slice and Dice because Demonic Tutor is essentially a Slice and Dice. And then your fourth card is, yeah, the quality of your fourth card goes down a lot.
I think it needs to be another 1-mana blue spell, like Ponder, probably not Brainstorm.
Yeah, Ponder sounds good, and that's actually what Tom went with.
Well, and I think that's the whole advantage doing it on your own main phase.
Yeah, you get an extra mana out of the deal, which is significant.
Yeah,
And you play around mental misstep.
I mean, wow, at this point, I don't know what you do here if you're Rich. It seems really scary to give your opponent Ancestral Ponder. But any other cards clear your board when you have him on a 1-turn clock. Like, you're hoping there's just not an answer in his top 6 cards, 7 cards. That's a lot of cards in Vintage. Wow.
Yeah. You get to see so many cards here, but with the Grafdigger's Cage out, Tom's deck is a lot weaker. Well, one advantage to this is that
Dak still matters.
Exactly. Dak taking Emerald means that if Tom has to either ponder into mana, which is good for Rich because mana is not, something that's going to be good long term, or risk not being able to slice. Tom's still a mana short of DT Slice and Dice.
Yeah. Do we know if he chose Shuffle or?
So Tom shuffled. Rich knows that. Yeah, I like Dacking the Mox here.
Absolutely.
You put Tom on 1 turn to draw an untapped mana source. I guess this isn't standard. All your mana sources are untapped, but to draw a mana source and wipe the board. In which case, you have a Dak and a Brainstorm, so your next turn is going to be pretty good too. All right. And Pyroblast does not do it. So Tom has to DT for, I guess, like he could DT for Time Walk.
I think he has to go for Time Walk and hope to draw
Slice.
The slice off the top and then blow up deck.
Yeah, he might as well just do that, next turn.
No, I mean, literally, it uses all his mana just to Time Walk.
And there we have it.
That'll do it. Well, I think that was just a great example of why Pyromancer Delver is so widely played in Vintage. It's just always in it.
And right there, we also saw Gifts resolve both games. Granted, the first game there was as Rich would say, a deterministic victory, but game 2, I think that was the best Gifts pile Tom could make, and he ended up still needing to ponder into 2 mana and only hit 1 on the ponder.
Yeah, and I mean, just him having to shuffle off the ponder with so many powerful cards in his deck is I think, a little unlucky. And my initial reaction of, well, just say go and Gifts and end of turn was certainly wrong. I really like the way Tom played that. I like the fact that he threw another 1 mana draw spell into his hand.
Yeah, that was good. And it was a good pile split for Rich, too.
Yep, and then we got Dak Faden, greatest thief in the multiverse got to literally steal the game off that
Yes, he
emerald.
did. So it looks like up next we've got Steve Menendian against Randy Bueller with Efro and Tom on commentaries. So we'll see what those guys have to say, and we'll be back in a few minutes.